Hello and welcome to the Deep Dive. I'm Hannah Mullaney, Client Solutions Director at Saville Assessment, and each episode I'll be joined by an industry expert to discuss the hottest topics in assessment today. Let's dive in. Hello, today we are talking about leadership in STEM, and I'm joined by Stu North from Quotient Sciences. Stu, why don't you kick us off by telling us a little bit about you and your career to date?
So I'm currently Senior Manager for Learning Development in Quotient. I've been at Quotient nearly 4 years. It'll be 4 years at the end of September. In my career, I've probably described myself mostly as a behavioural facilitator and coach. So I started my career in a contact centre for Royal Mail. I became a performance coach and then moved into the training team. Back then it was like mail centres and systems, and I was thinking, no, this is not a job for me. It's a bit boring. But then I got into some like leadership development, and that became much more kind of behavioural focused. So I did history and psychology at university, and at that point I started to kind of utilise the psychology part of that degree. Something for me is that I love to work with people. I want to know what makes them do the things that they do, whether they're good things or bad things, and that shift in training, and I've done that ever since. I've probably like last 12, 14 years probably actually now. So I think I've done more or less exclusively behavioural training, so working with more senior people, doing some coaching, doing some facilitation, working with teams, my overriding thing is principle in life, I suppose, is do what works. But if it's not, become aware of it and do something else. So awareness for me is like the bridge to effectiveness. So you've got to reflect, you've got to self-assess, you've got to be able to do those things, but I don't think people do this very naturally. So I think this is where training and facilitation and coaching can really lend a hand. And then give people some models, some ideas to build on that awareness. Awareness is only as good as someone's ability to then do that thing differently and experiment with that makes them more effective.
Yeah, absolutely. And so what prompted, just out of interest, your move to Quotient Sciences? Because that is quite a different organisation, I feel, to the organisations that you worked in previously.
So I've always worked for big corporates. Like the last two have been Royal Mail and E.ON Energy, which is a massive global company. And I left E.ON through voluntary redundancy. So I wasn't really looking to change, but when the opportunity came available, I took it. And then I worked for myself for 3 months. And after about 2.5, I was thinking, this isn't going to work.
You need the people.
It was a lot of time on my own and not much time interacting with people other than the clients and the pictures and that kind of stuff. So I was kind of looking around for opportunities. I was in a good position in the sense that I didn't have to immediately find a job or anything like that. So I was looking for something with a good fit, and I did want something that was a bit smaller, that I could take almost full control of. And Quotient was an excellent fit. So they didn't have an L&D presence other than one of the people function business partners at the moment. So she was currently doing all that training. So I was able to come in and kind of make it my own. And I like that idea. Live by the sword, die by the sword. So I was like, I'll do what I think is right. And if it fails, then just let me know.
And I'll have another go using something different.
Or you can get someone else in. That's the other thing.
And so, thinking about our topic today, leadership in STEM organisations, what would you say are the main challenges from a leadership perspective?
I think STEM organisations are quite different in the sense that they've got a high proportion of you'd probably call introverted leaders. From my experience, people in this type of organisation, they're very focused, they're very specialist. They maybe aren't as good in terms of people skills because they are more focused on the science, the technological tasks that they're looking to achieve. They will work with other people, and some of them are really good at this. But in terms of leadership, you've got to almost find a way of building that people interaction capacity. These organisations, Quotient is a good example of this. Is a lot of our results require lots of different departments working together. They've got to be good at handing things over, at challenging each other in a positive way, and sometimes they haven't developed those skills as much as you might find in a different organisation or a service organisation specifically. So I think the challenge of leadership is some of them don't even want to be leaders, I suppose. They want to dedicate their time to the science, but they have to lead the people, coach the people, develop their skills, develop their careers, and they might find that a little bit more challenging.
And so I guess there are a couple of things there, aren't there? There's the kind of motivational piece, and then there's the I guess the developing the capability piece. I'd quite like to go to the developing the capability piece, but could we just touch on the motivation piece, because I think that's a really interesting one. If you have a large population of individuals who aren't interested in leading, what do you do with that? Do you try and entice them? Do you try and change their mind? Or if they don't want it, then surely that's kind of the first hurdle that they haven't got over.
And again, for me, I suppose, a question in our interviewing skills. So a lot of these people move up the ladder internally. When they like the science, they like the company. We do have specialist roles. So we do have formulation scientists that they can really specialise, never have to lead people, but they will be expected to join, in effect, a matrix team. So they might have to input into client calls, that kind of stuff. So really what we've done since I've joined the organisation is put a lot of time into what we would call a personal effectiveness offer. So we schedule this every quarter. Part of this is dedicated to leadership, part of this is dedicated to individual effectiveness, and it's things like assertiveness and customer service and things like that. So we offer that probably 6 to 8 courses every quarter, and we also have a kind of an open avenue for people to kind of go, if you need something else, come to us. We also offer some specific courses on leadership. In terms of our internal recruitment, one of our questions is, why do you want to be a leader? And again, if they're just doing it because that's the role or the career pathway, we do want to highlight that with them. There are expectations of being a leader in this role. You will be expected to lead other people as well as progress the science. So it's for them to be fully aware when they step into that role what their obligations are, and we support them.
So it's the setting expectations piece. Yes, and I guess until we solve the problem of vertical trajectories being the only trajectories, we'll probably always have that problem.
And I think you're completely right. I think it's one of those things is that in organisations, not just in STEM organisations, to progress up the ladder, you tend to have to attract a team and lead a team. We don't often, and I think this is a challenge for us specifically in Quotient, carve out space for people to do their best work without having to have the responsibility of leading other people.
Yes.
We could do more in that space, I think.
Yes, definitely. Maybe just to sort of loop back to one of the comments you made at the beginning, Quotient, probably like many other STEM organisations, probably having a higher proportion of introverts within it. I think there's a trend, and I'm seeing this in a lot of places, that our workplaces are becoming more sort of social, more collaborative, that we're spending a higher percentage of our time in our jobs, regardless of job, dealing with other people. Is that a trend that you've seen within Quotient as well?
I think we were on the cusp of that probably before COVID, and COVID. I think COVID has probably set us back a little bit. There's a couple of facets to this, I think, because when everyone's in the office together, that proximity created robust teams. It can't not really.
Yes.
When you're working alongside people day after day, you've got to find a way of interacting with them positively, even if you don't like it. And people generally do because they've got to do it.
Yeah.
What the COVID has done, and like many other organisations, we have a lot of people that are working from home, at least part of the week, but we've got a lot of people that are on site most of the time because they're in the labs or in the science, they're doing the science. So there are places for people to kind of back away from the people interactions until it's absolutely necessary. And I think this is a challenge that we've got, and I think other companies have got as well. We don't want to force everyone back into the office, but we've got to find ways of creating meaningful connections across our matrix teams and our like functional teams, because people aren't there together all the time.
Yeah. And so what's the impact of that on trying to, or needing to, really accelerate young leaders' development in terms of that people stuff?
Yeah, and again, this is something that we're trying to kind of progress. So when we are moving people into leadership positions, we're trying to, in effect, give them a catalogue of choices for them to assess against. So this is where Saville has helped us a little bit. So we are doing webinars. So I lead a number of webinars and I do those quarterly things, but we're also utilising LinkedIn Learning. We're also utilising Get Abstract, which is like a micro learning kind of platform. But what Saville has allowed us to do is through that report, people can identify the lower scoring traits. And what we try to position in Quotient is to kind of go, focus on your strengths, know what your strengths are. You'll do this naturally. Get better at doing those things. People tend to want to do that anyway because when you're able to use your strengths every day, you feel pretty good about it. But what we're also trying to do is mitigate any risks associated to the lower scoring traits. So if people aren't particularly good at feedback or at teamwork or at some of those things, we're not saying everybody has to be exactly the same. We're not saying that everyone has to be a robot. But what we're saying is that at least get to a point where this doesn't cause you any problems. So, what's the minimum amount of skill and competency and comfort that you need to be effective with that trait, if it's teamwork, if it's feedback, if it's something else, and then progress your development by things like Get Abstract or coaching or LinkedIn Learning or joining one of the scheduled courses, and that allows them access to multiple different channels that might progress their skill in that area.
Thanks for the plug there.
That's all right. It's my pleasure.
You've talked a little bit there about some of the things that you've seen kind of working well in that space, developing leaders in that kind of people space in STEM. What are some of the things that you've seen that have maybe worked less well over the years? Could you talk to us a little bit about those?
Yeah. So, I mean, and again, this is why we're offering more of a multi-channel approach. So, you might call it blended learning, I suppose. But what sometimes turns people off is that face-to-face facilitation in STEM. So people get a bit anxious. My experience of introverts is they don't mind turning up for training, but they don't want the focus on them. They don't want the attention on. They don't want to be pointed out in a group of even 12 people. Again, Hannah, what's your thoughts? Oh God, I'm under the microscope, and it's a lot of pressure, and it causes anxiety and those kind of things. So the face-to-face facilitation has to be done in a way that creates a level of comfort. So what doesn't happen, so what hasn't worked sometimes, I think, not just in Quotient but in other organisations, is that people are already feeling a little bit on edge turning up to a face-to-face facilitation. They don't know if they're going to get elevated into the spotlight, and they don't want that. They tend not to like the role plays so much.
Who likes the role
well,
plays?
I don't mind a role play, Hannah, to be honest.
That does not surprise me.
But the thing is, what I've developed over the years is working in small groups.
Yeah.
Rather than role play, doing some kind of planning to how would you deal with this situation. Talk us through how you would structure those sentences, structure that approach, that kind of stuff. So it's those kind of things that you only tweak them slightly, but again, it gives them a possibility of inputting into those things. Another thing that we've done quite a lot in our webinar facilitation is we've utilised something called rounds. So it comes from Nancy Klein's Time to Think book, but more or less what you're saying is, I'm going to hear from everybody. This is the order. So you'll give them the order of the people who are on the course, and you say, if you don't have anything to input, just say pass, we'll move on to the next person. So it gives introverts an opportunity to kind of really think about it before it's their turn, and if they are feeling anxious, they can just say pass and it moves on to the next person, and that's really helped as well.
It's kind of putting the structure in place, because it doesn't maybe happen as organically as if you're in the room with 10 extroverts.
Absolutely. And the thing is that they get fair warning, so it's not like you're just putting like, what's your thoughts on it? It's like, right, we're going to do this is how it works. You'll have time to think. If it gets to you and you haven't got anything to add, just say pass. So they're able to have a bit of thinking time to come up with what they want to input.
Yes, definitely. I know one of the things that we've talked about before is sort of to mandate or to not. Could you maybe share your thoughts on that? Because I think I've found some of the conversations we've had on that in the past quite interesting.
Personally, I would never mandate any training, no matter what it was, whether it's safety training, whether it's training for their job skill. People have got to have a desire to learn. If they don't, they're just making up the numbers, and it's an incorrect number. You say you've trained 100 people. How many people actually turned up, didn't listen to anything, changed no behaviour, built no awareness, and just went back to the job doing exactly the same thing. So my all efforts on this is to pull people into wanting to do the training, to build a desire within them to kind of go, I think this would be useful. So we spend quite a lot of time thinking about how we market our offer, how we describe it, how we kind of promote it internally. We are doing something at the moment in terms of twice a week we're doing a Micro Monday thing with a Get Abstract. So we'll do a bit of a blog post on our L&D channel. We will talk about something that's related to the subject, and then we'll give them one piece of learning that they can access or not. And we do a similar thing on a Wednesday that we call Time to Learn. It might be a 5-minute video, it might be a half-an-hour course that's on LinkedIn, and we talk about something. So it's kind of a pull strategy, and our entire approach to learning from personal effectiveness and leadership development is around, we want you to want to turn up, and if you don't, then don't. That being said, there are clearly people in the organisation that think we really need everyone to do this training. Again, I would always challenge to kind of go, well, we need to make them want to do it. We've got to give them a reason to turn up, because if we're just saying turn up or not and do the training, they're probably not going to get full value out of it.
Sometimes I feel that the people who maybe need to do the most work are maybe the people that don't think they need to do any work.
And I think there's some truth in that.
And how do you get those people to want to do the learning?
And I think that's always going to be a challenge, because self-awareness is a wonderful thing. Some people are not very self-aware, and the thing is that I suppose that you've got to kind of rely on their ability to self-assess. We do try and get feedback into the mix. So we're working on a performance management and kind of formal process at the moment, to try and make it a bit more connected to the work and a bit more smaller conversations more often that form the formal process. And that is an opportunity for people to give feedback to the individuals and from line manager to team member. There's no brilliant answer to this. Again, it's a kind of going, this is what the offer is. This is why it makes a difference. If you're interested in learning these things, then turn up. But like I say, not everyone's either feels they need it or has a desire to kind of learn that subject. So we'll certainly try, and but there's other than mandating it, they will probably still turn up, but not
but
actually.
They won't actually get anything from it, and you won't see any. Definitely no long-lasting behavioural change happening
absolutely.
from it.
And we've all been in training sessions where people clearly don't want to be there, and they are disruptive. They're disruptive. They cause issues with the learners, and in my entire career, I've only ever had to kick out 2 people, but it was on 2 mandatory courses.
There we go. Well, that tells you everything we need to know about mandating. We've talked, I guess, a little bit about the idea of sort of the people stuff perhaps being more challenging for kind of leadership development in STEM organisations. Really interestingly, when we've looked at some of the data that we've got, and within our own leadership model, we sort of have these 3 buckets of leadership. So we've got our professional leaders, our people leaders, and then our pioneering leaders. And what we found is that there seems to be a little bit of a kind of trajectory over time in terms of how these things develop. So on the professional side of things, people seem to kind of have that or pick that up very early in their career, particularly, I guess, in specialist fields. The pioneering stuff seems to come a little bit later, so that seems to be correlated with work experience. The people stuff, you seem to either have it or you don't. So that seems to be something that is either innate or maybe developed in early childhood and then pretty stable over time. I always find it really fascinating to then talk to people who are in the world of leadership development about this idea of developability, specifically thinking about these people skills. What's been your experience, Stu, of sort of success in that space? Because I think it probably is one of the hardest things to do.
I think of those 3 buckets, I think you're completely right. The people skills, some people are naturally good at this. They just seem to have it in them. They might not even have a position as leader, but in meetings they lead conversations, they influence other people, they do all the things that a good people person would do. They involve other people, they listen, they question, they're curious, all those kind of things. Some people just naturally have it. When people don't have it, again, it kind of comes back to desire, really, and risk associated to it. I think there are only 2 ways of motivating people, I think, and I think Tim Robbins had this right. It's pleasure and pain. What gives you more pleasure? What gives you the avoidance of pain? And when people are moving up an organisation, what can be really painful for them is if they don't do some of the people stuff. So they get feedback from their team members or their colleagues, kind of going, people are moaning and groaning about certain things, and that might be painful enough for that person to then motivate and go, I need to do more of this. People tend to rely on, in my experience, leaders especially, the things they are good at. And like you say, we learn the professional skills early on because it's expected. You're expected to turn to meetings on time. You're expected to get your work done when you said you were going to do it to a high level of quality. So those professional skills, we develop them very early. Pioneering, I think, comes with confidence. the more skill experience you have in a particular area, the more you're able to kind of go, right, well, could we do it in a different way? Let's innovate, let's push the boundaries a little bit. But the people skill, if you don't do it naturally, it is hard to develop. And again, it is linked to confidence, I think, and a level of comfort is to kind of go, right, well, I want to engage this person. How do I do it? And again, when we do training in these areas, a lot of our focus is, what do you currently do? What results are you kind of getting, especially in our coaching conversations. And the thing is that once they start to go, right, well, I'm not getting the results I'm getting, that's in. So what do you want to do different? What do you want to be different? How do you want to be different? And what kind of things could you do? Go away, experiment with that might make a difference. And again, this is a little bit like baby steps. You're not expecting people to change overnight. No one ever does. But the thing is, he's given them enough content to let them forge their own path. And if there are risks associated that they're feeling pain about, they will do it.
And what about on the pleasure side, the reward side, the carrot rather than the stick?
Yeah. And again, this is, when they are doing these experiments, I always kind of call them behavioral experiments, but they probably aren't. They're just going out and trying things. So they come to a course, they learn a couple of things that they could go away and try. They try it, it makes a small difference. That is pleasurable for them. They see these cracks of light. They see these these moments that actually matter to them and to their people, and that makes them feel good.
And they're scientists, right?
Yeah,
so...
and again, they love an experiment.
Yeah.
So again, I purposely use that terminology with them. Can you go? You do this every day in the lab, so why don't you just do it in your behaviour? All you're doing is trying something, see what the results are, and seeing if you could improve it over time. And once they see the responses that they're getting improving, then they start to do it a little bit more. And we're all creatures of habits at the end of the day. If we do something, it works, and we do it again, it works, and it works even better. You'll start to bring that into your everyday work and behaviour.
Do you think it's possible to develop strong people skills in individuals who really struggle in that space?
I think you can develop anything. The key part is desire. So it's desire, awareness, and experimentation is probably the three things that you need. If you don't have the desire, you'll never improve, because your pleasure and pain are the two kind of great motivators. But at the end of the day, if you aren't feeling a great deal of pain and you're not seeing or seeking the pleasure involved in those kind of behavioral changes, you might not create much desire in yourself to make a change. If there's no desire, no matter how much awareness you build, and then if you aren't aware, you might never experiment. The only other alternative then, and I think there is some real truth in this, is if you need people to do certain things, you've got to change the structures that allow them to do it. So you've got to almost create ways of working that everybody is expected to do, so you almost force people into changing their behaviours. That's a much more difficult and a much more prescriptive way of doing it, but that's your only other alternative. If you need a change to happen and people haven't got the desire, you've got to change the environment and the structure of what happens for everybody, so that they almost force through that learning experience.
And I guess there's something in, and I know we've talked about this in the work that we've done over the last year as well, and I think you've alluded to it today as well, around working with your strengths, is acknowledging that there are different types of leaders who have different strengths. And if you have somebody who really doesn't have the people stuff, actually a really sensible thing to do is to get them a number two who does have the people stuff. How much of that sort of planning do you do within Quotient?
We don't really put much into kind of a complementary team leadership, I suppose. But I think you're right in what you said a moment ago. It's people can be any type of leader that they want. You know, introverts make excellent leaders, and you don't have to be an extroverted person to be a good people person. But the thing is that people follow the people they respect, and they see as good, and I've got levels of influence, all those kind of things. So I mean, and this is one of the things that I think is important in STEM organizations. If someone's an excellent scientist and they're leading scientists, they will be successful, because people see that in them. They recognize how good they are at that thing, and that might be the thing that connects them. So if they want to develop, they'll stick around with that leader because so I think people do follow uniqueness. People that they see as good, useful, whatever it is, it's that kind of thing. So I think the thing is when we look at things like eye potential, for instance, or leadership traits and that kind of thing, and there are lots of models out there. No one has all of those things.
No.
And we're not expecting everyone to have all those things, but at least have enough of those things to be able to hook your followers. Leaders aren't leaders if they don't have anyone that's following them.
Yes, that idea of kind of clever people want to be led by clever people,
Yes,
I think stands really true. And I've definitely seen something similar to what you've just described there in tech organizations as well, where your sort of head of IT or your kind of IT director is a superstar developer who is absolutely sort of looked up to by their team because of their knowledge and their skill and their expertise.
Well, I mean, credibility is a powerful thing, isn't it? And when people look up and they go, that person is really credible, that's maybe enough for them to think, I'm going to follow this person.
Yeah, definitely. We sort of skipped over pandemic. And no conversation would be complete without a little bit of an exploration of pandemic impact. So maybe just to go back to that before we close out, what would you say were the sort of additional challenges posed by the pandemic in kind of leadership and leadership development in STEM organizations, do you think?
Yeah. So I mean, it's funny. I mean, our approach was very proactive, very early. I think in Quotient. So as soon as we locked down, like myself and the other people, functional leadership team, got around the table and went, how do we keep people engaged, not just in learning, but in the job? Everyone's working from home. They've been forced into this. Leaders aren't going to be seeing their team. So we did a very quick assessment of we've got to be task-based rather than time-based. So when people we I don't know why this happened, but we got into this space that if you're in the office at 8 and you finished at 4, that's all. You were doing a great job, and who knows what you were doing during those hours. But people, as long as you turned up on time, you left the amount of hours you were due to be in afterwards. That seemed to be enough for a lot of leaders. So now we've moved a lot of people out into their homes. They didn't know when they were clocking on or clocking off, and so we had some focus on, right, you need to be setting tasks, setting timelines, setting deadlines, talking to your people as often as possible, kind of checking on how they're doing, checking on the work, making sure they're aware of what they're doing, that kind of stuff. So we did that. In terms of learning development, what we did very, very early on is we were one of the first people, I think, to buy their Zoom license when everybody bought them. And we put on a couple of monthly webinars, and they were linked to our schedule catalog, but it was literally open to the entire company, so leaders and everybody. So we sent out the invites to 1,200 people, and we had one that was UK, one that was for the US. They could join each other's, but we had them at slightly different times so that the people in the US could access the webinars at a time that suited them. And we did that for the entire time of COVID. And because we weren't doing any face-to-face training, we were doing that often, and it allowed the company, we were getting upwards of 150, 160 people on each of these webinars, just because it gave them a chance to feel connected to someone in the company.
Yeah.
It kind of made me a bit of a mini like TV presence in the company. I remember once we opened up, I went down to our Reading site, and I walked through the door, and I was going into the office, and someone went, "Oh my God, it's you!" As if I was some kind of TV star or something. And I was like, "Yeah, I'll sign an autograph if you want." So it was interesting because once I started visiting the other sites, once it started opening up, everybody felt like they knew who I was.
Yeah.
And in reality, they probably did, but I think they felt they knew me because I was the one that presented all these things every single time. So it was interesting how that had like kept L&D alive in the company. To bring it back to kind of leadership, I think we did a number of webinars on remote working and leading in remote work and how you can connect, and we created this thing called chat shops. I don't know if other organizations call it this, but it was a 15-30 minute conversation with a team member, not related to work, just have a bit of a chat, have a bit of a catch up, find out how they're doing, drop in on them from time to time, make sure they're okay. And that was utilized by quite a lot of people in the company, which worked really well.
So, final question.
Okay.
What would be your top 3 pieces of advice for folk working in leadership development in STEM organizations?
Okay. Oh, that's a good one. I suppose some form of assessment, some form of ability to allow people to assess themselves. So
something like WAVE?
Yeah, something like WAVE would be useful. Yeah, so and keep it active and available. So one of the things that we've done and we do this every now and again, but we aren't doing it consistently, is have it available so that people can just request it whenever they felt it was necessary. So we did for Saville last year, we did a thing called Potential at Q, and we did it as all in one go. So we did it like, so this is your window to do it. Personally, I think it would be better, and I'm thinking about doing this over the next year, is just have it constantly available so that people can access it whenever they feel like they want to. So some form of assessment that gives them some valid information to kind of base their development direction on. I think the next thing is give them enough channels so that they can take control of their learning. So whether it's a mentoring program or a coaching program or facilitated scheduled offer or LinkedIn Learning or another LXP or something along those lines, people learn in many different ways. So give them plenty of opportunities to seek those things, and I think probably the third one, give them time. In organizations, everyone's busy, and I hear this all the time. Like, I don't have time to do this. Every time I have a schedule course, they're going, "Oh, a client call has come up and done this." So if we want people to learn, we want to take it seriously. We want to give them time. So so even if it's an hour a week or 2 hours a month or whatever it is, get them to have some dedicated time to at least reflect on what they're doing. So I think we could do more in that space, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Stu, it's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
For me as well. Thank you.
We hope you've enjoyed today's episode of The Deep Dive. If you have, please remember to like and subscribe to stay tuned for all our latest content. If you want more information on any of the topics you've heard today, check out the show notes for case studies, resources, and articles. I've been Hannah Mullaney. See you next time on The Deep Dive.